Hi, welcome to Weekend Walkabout, where we're in our gardens and years virtually. Today we're in New Zealand and we're talking about New Zealand's South Island, Alps, and shore. This is part 0. It's our warm-up session, your questions and answers. This is gardenatz.org. Janet McConovich, Stephen Nicola will be with me shortly.
Good morning, everyone. Just chiming in, Jen and Stephen are getting the slides, the PDF, to behave itself on the machine. One of the dangers of traveling is having slightly different equipment than usual. So we're here, and we will get going in just a minute. Thanks to everyone for joining us this morning.
We made it.
We made it barely.
We are
Not barely.
literally hot off the presses. Little trouble translating between our two computers that we were using. But good morning to everybody who is here. We're a little bit late for our warm-up time here, but if there's any questions that you've got, I will, we can take those anytime.
Nancy has a question in the chat that I can answer. It's what time is it here? It is 1:22 a.m. here. And Stephen and I both had a quick power nap, but Janet has been powering through. We had an amazing dinner tonight. We all went out for dinner and have been running high on that since then.
And it's been an amazing 2 weeks, totally an amazing 2 weeks. I have to thank all of you for being enthusiastic about seeing what's going on in New Zealand, because this is probably the first time that Stephen and I have ever been somewhere looking at gardens and nature and vacationing, where when we're done, we've actually looked at all the pictures that we took. So anyone who is here who is not familiar should know that you can ask questions at any time in the chat. And you can raise your hand when we get to pauses by looking for your participants list and a raise your hand control, which might be in your participants list, and it might also be in reactions.
Oh, Mary Lou, I can answer this one while they're figuring out the screen thing. We are currently on the North Island. We just got back up from the South Island. We arrived back at our friend in Auckland's house last night. So we are currently north, but I think a lot of today's presentation is going to be talking about the South Island.
Yeah, and for those who are not familiar, I'll show you a map of where we are in New Zealand and how that relates to our normal scope in Michigan. But it's, despite the fact that I've looked at how that all works out, I've written out how it all works out, it still feels like we're on Mars. This is a very, very
different.
It's a long way away from home, and it's just been terribly exciting. Anything else going on here in chat? Oh, Nancy, I'm very happy to share with you for what's going on. We are comfortable here in, well, Steve and I have been wearing layers because we've been going through a lot of different temperatures, not a lot of different temperatures, but anywhere from 40s to 60s this last 2 weeks. And sometimes windy, sometimes very windy, sometimes a wet cold. We were talking with our New Zealand hosts today about winters and the fact that our hosts have lived in Canada as in Scotland as well as here, so they know what a real winter is, whereas a lot of New Zealanders think that it's just cold at 50 degrees or anything under 50 degrees. We were talking about the fact that a wet cold can feel very, very cold. But this is one of the few places on Earth where there is cold, the coldest you can get, a glacier. And within 100 feet of the glacier, there are, well, maybe not 100 feet, 100 feet of elevation. There are plants that belong in almost the subtropics.
Subtropics,
It's a pretty amazing place.
I can't see us to see.
And speaking of winter, Stacy had the same question that I did, and it's complicated, Stacy, about the hardiness zones, as we learned a couple of weeks ago, because those are based on winters. But Stacy wants to know what zone we're in.
We are in zone 8 here, I think. I do have a map. I hope we get to it. But where we are here in the Auckland area, we're in an 8 and 9, and there is 10 here on the North Island. The South Island is primarily zone 5 on the tops of the mountains, down to zone 8 depending on whether you're on the coast. And it is awesome to see what a difference that makes. Okay,
Yeah.
let's see. It's been wearing some pretty heavy duty sunscreen and hat
Yeah.
this whole time it's here. The sun can be kind of intense down here.
Very intense. They don't have much of an ozone layer.
Or so we hear. We have a list of questions whenever we go on a trip somewhere. We write down our questions because there's always more things for us to learn than we're able to learn while we're actually out. And we have quite a long list of questions. Someone asked last week about ticks, Sonia? Someone asked about ticks. And we had asked.
Yeah, I think Michelle asked about.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Stephen and I had asked about mosquitoes. We said, why aren't there any mosquitoes? There's mosquitoes in our, well, New Zealand is an island nation apart from everything else for a long time, a million years, a couple million years, I've forgotten how long. And it only had birds and reptiles, amphibians on it. It had no mammals except for 2 bat species. So the mosquitoes that evolved here like to eat bird blood, not people blood. So no mammals were here to teach them how to eat. So we really haven't had to have any problems, but we did run into, Sonia knows the name, sandflies, were they, Sonia? Sandflies, I
Yeah,
think was the
sandflies.
name. And they can bite.
Yes,
They're like
and
little midges.
They sting a little bit.
Yeah.
Then if you think about it, you itch. If you don't think about it, you might not.
But they're not all over the place. It isn't like
Yeah.
there's swarms of them, but we ran into them a couple of times where we would sit down. When did that happen? We were sitting somewhere. Oh, when we were hiking, we'd sit. And if we sat for long enough, one of them would find
Find
us
you,
and
yeah.
we'd see it flying around, so we'd leave. But not too bad for that.
Make sure I plug this in.
Okay, let's get started.
Oh,
Let's get
okay.
moving. That's it for our warm-up session. So we'll go to our weekend walkabout part 1 very shortly. Stay with us.